go. So beginning right away. So today we're going to be finding the distance between 2 points. Now you will see this, I promise. There's a really good chance 70% of ACT tests will contain a problem with distance between either 2 points on a line or just 2 floating points. I saw this on the end of level test often as well. Okay, so we're going to go through and learn this today and make sure we're good. So to find the distance between 2 points, before we actually get through and go through and do this, what you need to understand is that 2 points might be just floating around in the abyss. So look, I have A and B. They're just floating. They're not connected by a line. We can still find the distance between them. And when I say I'm finding the distance, guys, I mean the shortest distance, ding, 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 ding. The shortest distance, which would be that. Now, a lot of times we like to think that we can just count. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you guys, you might be wrong. You've got to do the math behind it because it might be 10.002, and you, by the human eye, look at it and say, oh, that's 10, but you might be wrong, okay? So you can find the distance between 2 floating points, or you can find the distance between 2 points on a line. So notice I have this green line. I have these 2 points sitting on the line at some point, and we can find the distance between them. Now understand, we are finding the distance between A and B on the line, same thing. It just happens to be on the line. We'd be finding that distance, okay? So the distance will work no matter what. Here it is. The distance formula. Write it down. Okay, so we're going to be given 2 points, x and y, x and y. Now notice these little ones in here. Don't let them scare you. That just means I'm calling this point 1. I'm calling this point 2, because we're going to have 2 points. And you can find the distance using this distance formula. So d just means distance. So distance is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. So then once you've squared these two, you've subtracted these 2 things and squared it, you've subtracted these 2 things and squared it, then you can add them up and combine them, and then you'll go through and simplify the root, just as we've been practicing. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, guys. Looking at me up here, really quick, if I walk from this distance, if I walk from here to here, that distance, is that any different of a distance than if I walk from here to here, or is it the same distance? Same distance, so order doesn't matter. If you choose this to be your first point, or if you choose this to be your first point, it doesn't matter, because the distance is the same. Either way, you just got to stay consistent. So if you choose this to be the first point, make sure you label x and y, both the first point. If you choose this to be your first point, just make sure you label them x and y to be the first point. And then the other one would be your second point. So it doesn't matter as long as you stay consistent. Now think about it, guys. If I walk from here to here, and I ask you to find the midpoint, couldn't you find the total distance and then say divide by 2? And then that puts me right between, right? Okay, so midpoint, why learn the midpoint formula? You don't need to. Do the distance formula, which is quick, and then divide it by 2, okay? So let's not make it harder than we need to. Any questions on the distance formula? This is something you have to memorize. Guys, in secondary 3, you have to memorize things. It's just that simple. My suggestion for memorizing things, this is what I did in college. I had to memorize lots of stuff. You just write it down like 10 times in a row, and then usually you got it. So, anyways, here we go. Is everybody good? Does everybody have it written down? The distance formula. Okay, awesome. All right, let's just practice it then. I mean, that's what we got to do. It says, given these 2 points, find the distance between and the midpoint. So don't try to draw this on your notes. You can take notes when we get to actually calculating the distance. It's going to take too long for you to, write down the points. So given these 2 points, find the distance between them and the midpoint. Once again, what we're trying to find, guys, is the distance right here. We can't just count. We have to use the distance formula. All right, so what point? We need to know what point these fall at. So what's point A at? X comma y. So we're going back 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, no, negative 1, 2, 3, negative 3, and down 1. Down 1, 2. So A is at the point negative 3, negative 2. I'm going to write that over here. So A is at the point negative 3, negative 2. And then we have another point. We have point B. It's over 5 up 4. So we have the point 5 comma 4. Now we know that the distance is the same from A to B as to B to A. So it doesn't matter which one's our first point as long as we stay consistent. So this is how I label it, guys. I go like this. I have an X, Y point. I have an X, Y point. Well, I'm going to call this the first point. Why not? I just randomly chose to call it my first point. I'm going to call this my second point. I'm staying consistent. That's all we need to do. Questions? Now let's just plug it in. So distance is equal to the square root of x2. So I locate x2. It's 5. 5 minus x1. Locate x1. It's negative 3. Now don't make little slight errors, guys. You've got to be more advanced. You've got to be articulate in secondary 3. So we're doing 5 minus x1, which is negative 3. Does everybody see what I did there? Squared plus y2, which is, locate y2, it's 4. I write minus, and then I look at y1 so I don't make any errors, minus negative 2, because y1 is negative 2 squared. Questions on how I plug that in? Okay, simplifying it again. All right, 5 minus, okay, I'm going to switch colors here. 5 minus negative 3. Well, what happens when you minus a negative? It turns to a positive. So really what we're doing is 5 plus positive 3, or just 5 plus 3, guys, is 8. I'm going to use parentheses, very important. As you've seen, many of you have messed up on the quadratic formula simply because you don't put parentheses. So we have 8 squared plus 4 minus negative 2. When you minus a negative, it changes to a positive. So 4 plus 2 is 6 squared. Okay, questions? Please ask if you do. All right, then continuing onward, distance is equal to the square root of 8 squared is 64 plus 6 squared is, okay, so distance is equal to the square root of what? 64 plus 36. Okay. Okay, so this one came out to be perfect. So distance is equal to the square root of 100 is 10. Now, let's say you didn't know that. Well, you do it on your calculator first. You say the square root of 100. If you got a decimal, you say, no, we're in secondary 3 now. I got to go down and break it down into our factor tree. It does come out perfect, though, so you got 10, so you can be done. Our distance was 10. Very good. Any questions? Now, you're like, that would have been easier to count. Yeah, but what if you would have been wrong? You need to use a distance formula, because most of them aren't going to come out perfect. I did your homework. I've seen it on the ACT. Most of them come out to be not a pretty answer. Okay, any questions? Let's do another one that won't come out to be a pretty answer, and then you can see how to practice this. Okay, last one, and then I'm going to let you just practice. So stay with me on this last one here. Oh, yeah, let's find the midpoint. All right, so the midpoint would be halfway between, right? Right there. So we know the total distance is 10. So what would the midpoint be? 5, because you'll take your total distance 10, divide it by 2. Thank you for reminding me to not forget the midpoint. So we know our midpoint's at 5. Does that make it's 5 units? Does that make sense? Okay. Very good. Very, very good. Here we go. Moving on. Okay, so it says find the distance on line AB, where A is -1, -2, and B is 5, -6. Those are the endpoints. Find the midpoint as well. So I'm looking at this. I'm not going to graph it. I'm just going to use the information and find the distance between those 2 points. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, so first of all, I got to say, well, I have an XY point right there. I have an XY point right there. Which one do I want to call my first point? It doesn't matter. As long as you stay consistent, I'll call this my first point. I'll call this my second point. So now we're going to plug it in. So distance is equal to the square root of x2. Locate x2. What is it? 5 minus x1. What is x1? -1, and that's squared. Question so far. Plus y2, which is -6, minus y1, so minus -2 squared. So we have to be really articulate and really careful with our negatives. Does everybody see what I did there? So distance is equal to, now if you don't think about these problems, you can make a lot of errors, and that would be a shame. So 5 minus -1. When you minus negative, it becomes a positive. So 5 plus +1, or just 5 plus 1 is? 6. +6, so 6 squared. And then plus, let's be careful here. Oh, so careful. -6 minus -2. Well, first of all, before I think about that, I'm going to go, okay, so that's really -6 plus 2, which is negative 4. So negative 4 squared. So then distance is equal to the square root of 6 squared is 6 squared, 6 times 6, 36. And then this is where if you just type it into your calculator as negative 4 squared, it's going to come out negative, which is wrong. You got to type it in with parentheses. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. So we get distance is equal to the square root of 56. 52. Yes, 52. Okay. Now type it into your calculator and tell me what you get. A decimal. Okay, I'm going to write down the decimal just for now, but we have to keep going. 7.21. Okay, so now we know. I promise, you guys, I promise on an ACT, they will not let you, they won't have that answer. They're going to have a different answer. They're going to have the simplified root. So this is where I go off to the side and say, okay, so I know it's a decimal. I got to see if it can break down by hand. So the square root of 52. So we're going to list our factors. So 52, I said, okay, I divided it by 2. So I got 2 times 26. And then I said, okay, I'm just going to keep going with that. 26 divided by 2, and it's 13. So 2 times 13. Now don't forget, don't double dip. You don't have a 26 anymore. You rewrote it as 2 and 13. All right, now we're pulling out groups of 2. So if there's 2 of them, they can leave the house, okay? So we're pulling out a 2 for those 2 2s. Now that's not 2 times 2 on the outside. Some of you still did that on the quiz, right? That's just a 2 on the outside, accounting for the 2 2s that you were able to pull out because there was 2 of them. So we have a 2, and then can we pull out 13? No, we can't pull it out. It's got to stick. So we still have the root, the square root of 13. So guys, look. The distance is equal to 2 square roots of 13. Now type that into your calculator and tell me what you get. 2 times the square root of 13. 7.21. Now that makes sense, guys. That makes sense. It should be the same answer. It is the same answer. This is just the more simplified answer of the square root of 52. Does that make sense? So really, this is the answer you're going to see at this level of math. Now I want to see both the decimal and the pretty answer, just so I know that you know. Okay, questions. Please ask if you have it. Now let's quickly find the midpoint. So we have to, am I okay to erase that over there for a second? Because this one's a little bit trickier. The midpoint is, kind of. I want to give myself some room. Okay. So I'm going to take the total distance, which was the pretty answer of it. So it was 2 square roots of 13. And to find the midpoint, we know we divide it by 2. Okay, look at that. Does it simplify? The 2's do. 2 and 2 divide out and become 1 over 1. So we have 1 square root of 13, which is just the square root of 13. 1 times anything, guys, is just itself. So we have the square root of 13. And then on bottom, we have divided by 1. What's anything divided by 1? Itself. So midpoint would be the square root of 13. And if you wanted to do the decimal answer, type in the square root of 13 if you wanted both. But I need the pretty answer. Okay? So that's our midpoint. Any questions? Practice, practice, practice. So problems 1 through 3 on the worksheet. Now, guys, you should really know how to do slope of a line on problem number 3. It says, what's the slope of the line? Well, that is the rise over the run, or the change in y over the change in x between the 2 points. That is something you should have learned in secondary math 1, and you should have been tested on it until you were, I don't know. I mean, that should be like, you should know that. So I just wrote it up there to remind you what slope is. It's rise over run. And you need to be able to do that today. Practice those problems and ask so I can clarify. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go really slow here because we're having a lot of mathematical misconceptions and people are not paying attention to the little details. So please watch carefully. So now we're going to learn how to find the average rate of change on a function. So we're going to be given an interval a to b. So an interval a to b where a is the smallest value, the smallest point, and b is the largest point, the largest value. And we're going to find the average rate of change between those 2 points on the function. So this is the formula here. This is the average rate of change formula. And it's f of b minus f of a all over b minus a. So what f of b means is just what's our function at b. All f of a means what's our function at a. And that's all over b minus a. So once again, f of b minus f of a all over b minus a. Now you're going to be given an interval from a to b on what we're looking at. A will be the smallest value, b will be the largest value. Does that make sense? Now even if it doesn't yet, it probably will with the next example. And if it doesn't, please stop me. Don't just not say anything and then not know what you're doing. Okay? I'm fine with questions because sometimes I think I made sense and I didn't. Okay, does everybody have that formula down almost so that we can actually practice this? Now, those of you that aren't writing down my formulas, you've got to. You've got to write them down. These are things you're going to have memorized. I promise I saw this on every single student. I'm not just making this up for kicks and giggles. I saw this on every single student's end of level test in secondary 3 this year. Okay? So you will see this again. And it's going to be on most tests because I want you ready for it when that end of level rolls around. Okay, let's do our first example. Please ask questions if you're confused. Okay, so we're given the function f of x is equal to x squared plus 2x. We're asked, what's the average rate of change between x is equal to -1 and x is equal to 3? Now you need to understand, when you see the word average rate of change, you have to know to use this formula. They will not give you the formula. I'm not going to give it to you on the test. You have to read it and know average rate of change is this formula. So keep that in mind. They're not going to give you the formula, even though I did. I'm not going to give it to you on the test. You're going to have to know, okay? Okay, so first of all, we have to decide. Now listen. First of all, we have to decide what's our A value and what's our B value. Okay, because this is our formula. We need the A's and B's. So our A value is always the smallest X value, or the smallest point on your interval. So we're going from -1 to +3. So A is the smallest value. So what's A? -1. Questions? B is your not smallest value, so B is 3. So this is on an interval from -1 to +3. Now we need to go through and find f of A. Well, guys, that just means what's your function at A? Well, A is -1. Is everybody following me? So this is asking us what's our function at -1? F of A means f of -1. Do you have questions on that? Okay, so what's our function at -1? Well, our function was x squared plus 2x. So we need to substitute in -1 into that function and calculate it. So I'm going to be doing, substituting it in wherever there's an x, we're going to have -1 squared, x squared, -1 squared, plus 2 times x. We're substituting in -1, so 2 times -1. All right, guys, be careful. Please be careful. I'm still seeing so many people do this. -1 squared. Is it going to be a negative or positive? Positive. Good. So it's +1. Thank you, Garrett. +1. Okay? So -1 squared is +1. Then right here we have +2 times -1, which is -2. So I'm in right, -2. Or you could have said plus -2. Same thing. Does everybody see how I did that? Are you sure? Okay. What's 1 minus 2? -1. Now I'm going to circle that so I don't forget that that was f of A. F of A, so I'm going to write that right here. F of A is equal to -1. Does everybody understand how I got f of A? Okay, moving on to B. I'm going to draw my line. So f of B. So now we need to find f of B. Well, that means f of 3 because B is 3. So f of 3. Does that make sense, everybody? What's our function at 3? So once again, substituting it in wherever there's an x. So that's going to be 3 squared plus 2 times 3. Any questions? Are you sure? Okay, let's continue. 3 squared is 9 plus 2 times 3 is, and 15. So you're saying that f of b is equal to 15. I'm going to circle that so I can see it easily. Now it is so important that you're doing f of b minus f of a all over b minus a. We have f of b. We have f of a. We have b and a. All we have to do is substitute it, put it into our formula. So f of b, what is f of b? 15. So right here, I'm putting in a 15 minus f of a. So now I'm going to look at f of a. What was it? -1. So minus -1. Does everybody see how that's f of b minus f of a? Yes or no? And that's all over b minus a. So I'm going to write b. It's 3 minus, now look at a. -1. Does everybody see how that's b minus a? Okay, let's keep going. Now, I still have people saying, when they only have, I have like 80% of the class still saying this. Well, if it was just a subtraction sign, do we cross the line and change the sign? No, not necessarily. No. They only fix things if we're subtracting a negative. If we're subtracting a negative, that's when we have to say subtracting negative, so that means we make it a positive, only because we're subtracting a negative. Okay, so 15 plus positive 1 is 16 on top and on bottom. 3 minus -1. Only because we're minusing a negative do we change the signs here. Okay, 3 plus positive 1 is 4. Now we're looking at this. Any questions to that? What's 16 divided by 4? Our average rate of change is 4. One more, then I'm going to let you work, because they're not going to always come out to be pretty. In fact, in secondary 3, they're not going to come out to be pretty most often. Okay, here we go. One more. Find the average rate of change on the interval. This one's worded differently. You have to know when you see the word average rate of change on which function to use. So find the average rate of change on the interval from -1,000, on the interval from -1,000 to 5,000 on the function s of p is equal to 12.2 square roots of p plus 1. So looking at this, guys, the first thing you do is you have to know when you see the word average rate of change that we're going to be using this formula. F of b minus f of a all over b minus a. Now you have to decide on your interval which one's a and which one's b. So which one's a? 1,000 is always the smallest. And then what's b? 5,000. Questions? All right, on this function, s of p, that just means a function, is equal to 12.2 times the square root of p plus 1. So let's go through and find f of a, because that's what we need. Well, a is what? What's a? 1,000. So we're doing f of 1,000. Oh, and it's s of 1,000. I should use the correct. That I'm recording. I got it, apparently. I should use the correct thing. So I'm doing s of 1,000, and we're just plugging that into our function here. Wherever there's a p, because it's s of p. So we have 12.2 times the square root of 1,000, because that's p, 1,000 plus 1. So type it into your calculator. This time you can do decimals. 12.2 times the square root of 1,001. So what do you get? Yes. Okay. You got it right. Okay, wait. You got what? 300. Yeah, 385. Okay, you got it right. 385.9907253. Now you need to understand something, guys. You can't round right here. You're going to use that in your formula, and if you round right here, your rounding in the end might be off by just a decimal. That's just enough to get it wrong. You can't round until the final answer. Do you all understand that? Sucks, because that's a long number. Okay. Let's find f of b really quick. So f of b means what's our function at b? Well, we're doing s of p. I should use the correct one once again. So s of p. So s of 5,000, because b is 5,000. so we're plugging in 5,000. So we're going to have 12.2 times the square root of 5,000 plus 1. So we're going to have 12.2 times the square root of 5,001. Now what do you get? I got 862.75. 75, I got 65, but okay. 65358. I think you did too. I think you got that too.
Yes.
Okay. Did we find f of a and f of b? Do we have a and b?
Yes.
So now we can go through and plug it into our formula. So f of b, you have to use the whole decimal, 862. Make sure you don't do f of a minus f of b. It's f of b minus f of a. So 756.5358 minus f of b. I'm going to have to go underneath. Minus f of b, which is this. 385.9907253. And that's all over. Does everybody see how that's f of b minus f of a? All over b minus a, so that's 5,000 minus 1,000. And you can type that in. Now, if you type that whole thing into your calculator, when you divide and then you put this, you have to use parentheses. Divide what? 5,000 minus 1,000 is how many thousands?
Oh, I think it's like this, but I got a decimal.
No, that's normal. We're now in secondary 3. We don't always have pretty answers.
Is it 0.079?
Nope. Did you do 6,000 on bottom?
Yeah.
Well, is it 6,000? 5,000 minus 1,000 is?
Oh.
That's where you went wrong. Anyone else calculate it?
Dang it.
I didn't get that either. Anyone else? I guess I could have typed it in wrong last night. Did you type in the full decimal?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
860, I'm going to do it. 862.7565. Hey guys, you have to go like this minus this, and hit enter, and then divide it by this. Yeah. Or you could, if you have to put this whole top thing in parentheses and the whole bottom thing in parentheses. That's probably what happened. All right, now what do you get? Now I'll believe you. Okay, there we go. So does everybody see how important parentheses are? Did you hear all those answers? They all have the right answer thing typed in. They didn't put parentheses. So is this whole top thing divided by the whole bottom thing? You have to use parentheses, or else actually calculate it, hit enter. Calculate it, hit enter, and then divide those things. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah, but you can do it on a separate sheet of paper so that you have to show your word. Yeah. And then just staple it on the separate sheet of paper and hand it in. So I get 0.119. If you don't get that when practicing typing that in, you need help typing it in, okay? All right. Do problems. No, wait. Look with me really quick. This one's quick. Questions on that? Did you all learn how to type it in correctly now? Okay, awesome. Okay, last one, and then I'm going to let you work for quite a while. Looking at this one, it's different, so don't just say, I get average rate of change, so I'm not going to pay attention. No, watch this, or you're going to ask me. Find the average rate of change between x is equal to -2 and x is equal to 1. Well, look, we're just given an XY chart. But think about it, guys. We have x values and f of x values, right? Y means f of x. Same thing, right? Everybody? Okay, so let's go through and do this one really quick. First of all, what's my A value? When you see average rate of change, you know you have to use the average rate of change formula, so I need my A's and B's. What's A? A is equal to -2, and B is equal to, that's my smallest, largest, so B is equal to 1. Okay, now we need to know f of A, which means what's our function at -2? Well, the XY table is the easiest. You don't have to calculate a dang thing. You look with your eyes. So find your function at -2. What's our function at -2?
7.
7. So f of A is is equal to 7. Please ask if you didn't understand what I just said. Okay, let's do f of b. That means what's our function at 1, because b is 1, so what's our function at 1? So find it on here, function at 1. Well, there's 1. What's our function at 1? -5. So now let's plug it in to our function f of b, which is -5 minus f of a minus 7 all over b, which is 1. Why? At the worst time, so just stop. 1. I hate you. Why in the Sam? Well, I'm gonna have to make that work because it's not working right now. You guys get the gist? Yay or nay? Okay, awesome. I can't go next. So do problems. I can't go next till my smartboard's working. It won't let me click on it. I gotta get it working. Do problems 4 through 6. Ready, set, go. It's working now. So if you want to finish, if you want to work, that's fine. But anyone that wants to watch me finish this problem, that's fine. So don't talk, but you can work and not watch, that's fine. But if you want to watch, I'm going to finish this one. My smartboard's up and going. So B minus A would have been 1. Seriously? Okay, back in business. Okay, so B is 1 minus A. A is -2, so minus -2. So then I continue to simplify. -5 minus 7 is -13. And then we have over 1, -12. -12. And then we have over, now on bottom we have 1 minus -2. So when you minus the negative, that's the only time you'll change the sign. So that'll be +3. So -12 divided by +3 is equal to -4. So our average rate of change was -4, which just means it was decreasing by 4. So now you can do problems 4 through 6. Be careful. Finishing this up here. So guys, now we're going to be talking with, if you watch carefully, this should go pretty quick here. We're going to be talking about lines. We're going to be talking about lines, and they're going to ask you to make a line that is perpendicular to another line. So guys, what perpendicular means is 90 degrees. So if you have a line, another line perpendicular means it will intersect it and make a 90-degree angle. But the math behind it doesn't, I mean, you're not going to use that, okay? You're just going to use this idea here. So you know lines have this form. Y is equal to mx plus b, where m is the slope, the rise over the run. And B is the y-intercept, where it's crossing the y-axis. Now, perpendicular lines, guys, they have opposite reciprocal slopes. So opposite means you'll take the fraction and flip. No, opposite means if it was positive, it's now negative. If it's negative, it's now positive. Opposite in sign. And then reciprocal is what means you grab the fraction and flip it. Opposite reciprocal. So if you have fraction 2/3, the reciprocal would be 3/2. You take a fraction and flip it. Does that make sense of what reciprocal means? So opposite reciprocal slope. So finding the slope is the easy part. Now no, you won't have the same y-intercept. Think about it. Well, it might not. It depends on the problem. But our problems probably, they won't have the same y-intercept. Meaning where they cross the y-axis might not be the same. So we're going to go ahead and do our first problem here. With that in mind, just the most important thing is that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. Quickly, it says graph the line y is equal to 5x plus 2. What is the perpendicular? What line is perpendicular and passes through this point? So first of all, I'm going to graph this line. Y is equal to 5x plus 2. So the first thing with graphing the line is graphing the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is plus 2, so I'm going up to 2. That's where it's crossing the y-axis. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my slope. Okay, so it's 5 over what? 1. So you go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1. You can go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you have to go over 1 this way, because think about it, guys. The line's going to be in line like this. Down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry, yeah. Down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over 1 again. So I'm drawing my line here. So we want to know what line is perpendicular. Well, perpendicular is going to have opposite reciprocal slope. So y is equal to mx plus b. I'm going to make the perpendicular line. So y is equal to, what's the opposite reciprocal slope of 5 over 1? 1 over 5, that's the reciprocal, and what's the opposite? Was it positive? Was it a positive slope before? So we need to put opposite, which would be negative. Does that make sense? Does everybody see how negative 1/5 is opposite and reciprocal of 5? Yes? So we just found the slope. And then we have x plus b. Now we can't use the same y-intercept. But we do know something else, guys. We know it passes through the point 1, 3. Well, remember, guys, these are x, y points. X, y. So we know that this is x and this is y. So plug it in here. So y is equal to what? 3. So we have 3 is equal to negative 1/5. And then x is, guys?
1.
1. Okay, 1. And then we have plus b. So we can now, look at it now. Do we know everything except for b? So can we solve for b? Yes. So now we can solve for b. We can solve for the y-intercept. So we have 3 is equal to negative 1/5 times 1 is negative 1/5 plus b. Now we're solving for b, piece by piece. So I'm going to add 1/5 to both sides. So I want the fraction for this one. So you'll do 3 plus 1/5. So b is equal to, you'll do it on your calculator. Most of you don't know how to do it by hand. And then you'll change it to a fraction and you get 16/5. So guys, we now know b. Look, we now know b. So we can put it in where there was a b. So this was our line with an opposite reciprocal slope, and then b is 16 over 5. So this would be our answer. This is the perpendicular line that passes through that point. Okay, did it make sense? Somewhat. We need to do another one. I can tell by your faces. No, we do. We do. Sorry, but we need another one. All right, let's do another one. Here we go. Given the line y is equal to negative 3x minus 4, what's the line perpendicular that passes through the point negative 1, negative 2? Well, I'm not going to graph it. I just want to know the perpendicular line. So I know that lines have the form y is equal to mx plus b. Now the slope is easy. The slope's easy. We look at the slope we were given, do the opposite and the reciprocal of it. So it's the positive, that is the opposite, positive 3, and then what's the reciprocal? What's the denominator on negative 3 right here?
1.
Okay, so opposite reciprocal would be what? Positive 1 over 3. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yes or no? Tell the truth.
Yes.
Okay. So our opposite reciprocal slope, we just took care of that. We have is positive 1/3. So then we have x plus b. We have all these unknowns, but guess what we were given that it goes through this point, this x, y point, negative 1, negative 2. X, y. Let's plug those in where x and y are. So y is negative 2, so I'm putting in negative 2 for y, because that's what y is, which is equal to 1/3 x is negative 1, plugging it in. And then I have plus b. And now I can solve for b piece by piece. So I have negative 2 is equal to negative 1 times 1/3 is negative 1/3. So then plus b. And then I'll add 1/3 to both sides. So then I can find b. If you do it, I want this fraction, and you get negative 5/3. So our b, our y-intercept is negative 5/3. So you'll go, this is our final answer. Y is equal to 1/3 x, and then our y-intercept was negative 5/3. We just found that. So minus 5/3. All right, finish up the worksheet.